I'm here with top Las Vegas criminal defense lawyer Michael Becker. And Mike, today I want to talk about hit and run laws here in Nevada. And before even getting to that, just by way of background, if you do get into an accident, if you're driving here in the state of Nevada, you get into an accident, what are your legal requirements? What do you have to do?
If you get involved into an accident, you have to provide your name, your address, your registration, and your driver's license to the other party.
And suppose that somebody's injured. You get an accident and someone in the other vehicle or your vehicle is injured. Are there additional requirements?
Yes, you also have a duty to render aid to someone that's injured. And that could include mainly calling 911 and asking for medical rescue.
So suppose that you don't do this. You get into an accident and you flee the scene, you don't exchange information, you don't render aid. What are the consequences? What does Nevada law say?
Well, if you leave the scene of an incident involving property damage only, that would be a misdemeanor, and you could be subjected to a fine of up to $1,000 and 6 months in jail. However, if somebody is injured or dies, you could face felony charges that carry up to 15 years in state prison.
So if someone's injured and you flee the scene, it's much more serious, obviously.
That's correct.
Now, Mike, a lot of people think of hit and run as being a very cut and dry offense. And that is, I was in an accident and I didn't do these things that you said were required by the law. Is that the end of the story? Or as a criminal defense lawyer, are there things that you can do to try to get the charge reduced or dismissed?
It's not the end of the story. First of all, the state or city would be required to prove that the driver knew that they had actually been in an accident, as opposed to a situation where a vehicle may have brushed another vehicle inadvertently. Also, most often when we see these cases, an individual may have a license plate number and it may come back, the registration may come back to the owner of a vehicle, but the state can't prove who was driving the vehicle at the time of the incident.
So maybe they can show that it was my car, but they can't show that I was the one actually driving.
Absolutely. Often what will happen is police will go to the registered owner of the vehicle and try to pressure the registered owner to admit that they were driving the vehicle at the time.
Well, and that sort of leads to an interesting question, and that is, if somebody comes to you, and I know this happens actually, not uncommonly, someone comes to you and says, I've been in an accident and I was scared, I didn't know what to do, I just fled the scene, I think the cops are looking for me. What advice would you give that person to sort of protect their rights?
Well, if as a defense attorney, that's my job to protect their rights. Mm-hmm. So what I advise in that situation is I advise my client to invoke their rights and not make any statements whatsoever. Now, if a person, it's up to the individual to decide how to handle it. If there were circumstances that affected your being forthcoming at the time and you feel a moral obligation to step forward to make the victim whole, that's of course your option. But as a legal matter, strictly as a legal matter, I advise my clients to invoke their rights so as not to incriminate themselves and face criminal prosecution.
And I guess the take-home message is that if you've been arrested for hit and run, or if you've been in a hit and run accident and you haven't been arrested yet and you don't know what's going to happen, maybe you're a fugitive, maybe you think the police may be looking for you, the best thing always is go see a criminal defense lawyer. Contact us at Las Vegas Defense Group. We can advise you and help figure out the best solution.
That's correct. And frankly, the costs of obtaining legal representation can often be far less than the costs you would pay if you were convicted of the crime. I'm attorney Michael Becker with the Las Vegas Defense Group. If you're under suspicion for hit and run or you've been charged with hit and run, call me at 702-DEFENSE and we'll talk about what we can do to get your charge dismissed or to keep it from being filed in the first place.